with Garrett Pete of Energy Ledger. Good to speak with you again, Garrett. We had a good conversation the other day. Hopefully some of that stuff will come up again in this conversation for the recording. I want to start by outlining that I was an ICO investor in 2017, and there were a lot of white papers. There's a meme that shows how an ICO is kind of goes, so it's a picture of a horse. Do you know the one I mean? It says ICO white paper is a perfectly drawn beginning of the horse. And then by the time it actually launches as a project, it's like a children's scribble, right? And so there's a bunch of ICO investments that I made that turned into a kiddie scribble. Nothing came of fruition. Your project, when did you actually launch? Because you've done a token launch a while ago.
1 year ago, a little bit over, December of 2020, we launched. And I guess to that, I would say I like to think of ours like a centaur. It started as a drawing of a horse, but it evolved into a standing, living human being. So it's a play on that, I guess. But I was able to do a lot more than I thought we were going to, in our white paper. So I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah, and now it's a full platform, and we're going to get into that. And it doesn't depend. It's not a money game with a crypto token that has no utility. There's utility built into the platform, and there's other revenue streams, and it's a serious project. So I'm very looking forward to describing that for the audience. I guess let's begin by doing that general high-level description of what is the product and service. Who is it relevant for as a target customer? And let's start from there.
Yeah, so at a very high level, what we are is we're addressing a huge problem in, every supply chain industry, but, oil and gas is going to be one of the first industries that is a target of the SEC when it comes to emissions reporting. That's going to be obligated to all companies that are publicly traded in the coming years. And what's called scope 3 emissions, which is emissions in the value chain, so that's from upstream production of the resource all the way to the customer. Offsetting those emissions is probably going to be mandatory here in just a couple of years. What we do is we help those companies measure their emissions, so track how much carbon they put in the atmosphere. And then we partner with, carbon offsetting companies that have, done rainforest restoration, they're growing biodiesel ingredients, or doing something to reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. Some go with direct carbon capture from the atmosphere, but it's a little bit more expensive. And we pair these two companies together. The ones emitting the carbon looking to offset can buy credits from the companies that are running these programs.
Gotcha. So that was well explained right there. It took a while for me to get it in the conversation the other day. I'm just not familiar with that space. So we're talking about carbon offsets.
Yep.
This is where big company. I guess you're suggesting that this is going to be relevant for many companies, not just the big bad polluting, like typical polluters like oil companies. So yes, companies are producing carbon that they're putting into the atmosphere, and there's government programs to help reduce that. So the companies, I see it as kind of they're funding a project that is doing good for the environment by like what kind of projects, what kind of things or companies are you working with that are doing that actual carbon program?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked there, because that kind of gives me it's kind of a good chance for us to flex what we've done already. We actually have $150 million worth of carbon credits under contract right now. So if you assume a price of $30 US per credit, we have 5 million credits that are under contract to be sold. And that particular program, our partner YE Planet, if you go to their website yeplanet.com, you could see more about what they do. It's actually a farm in Honduras, but also rainforest management, in that locality, that they basically restore the rainforest, which per hectare removes X amount of carbon, tons of carbon from the atmosphere. And then, the interesting thing with the biodiesel is those plants, as they grow, are, sucking carbon out of the atmosphere, but they also add as an ingredient to diesel, so that, that diesel isn't producing as much carbon and it's better for the air. The Honduran government, which is, I think it's called SEMNA and Mi Ambiente Plus, they issue one credit on the growth of, a jatropha plant, and then you get 2 more credits when you turn it into fuel. These credits, the best thing about them is they're not a speculative asset. A carbon credit is essentially something that's already happened in the past. It's carbon that's already been removed from the atmosphere and is being parceled and sold as as an offset or a credit to companies that are producing carbon.
Okay, so I want to get into, because you've got an enterprise grade platform that you're developing. I want to get into that. I also want to get more of your personal journey as a Web3 founder, right? Like, how did you, when you did the token launch, on what basis was that done? How has the product roadmap shifted, like your vision as a business shifted from whatever you thought you were going to do as an ICO launch or a token launch versus how things are shaping up now? I'm not sure which end of the spectrum to tackle that in. So should we start with the platform or background?
We can start with the story. I mean, I can give a quick synopsis of where we started, where we launched and where we are right now. Because it's a really fun story that I like to tell. So back in 2018, I saw this opportunity. I too was an ICO investor. And, it ended up being, a lot of losses that year. So, I kind of had to take those and, I just pick up the pieces and move forward. But, one of the best things I took out of it was I was like, well, there are enterprises. We finally had the attention of the banks, and we're starting to get the attentions of other giant corporations in the biggest industry in the world at, over $2 billion a year, or 2 trillion with a T, which is the oil and gas industry, is looking at this technology, and they're looking at blockchain technology. And there was a conference called Blockchain Oil and Gas. I scraped together, I think it was a couple $1,000. I bought a booth there, and this is in 2018. And I had a concept of using the public-private key pair system to denote a storage container of oil, right? So this is 2018. Now I filed for a patent, and I just had to, I had to basically go back to work. I was working on my bachelor's at the time, and then I'd work on my MBA afterwards. And, I kind of went through that, and just, fast forward, I think 2 years to the end of 2020, I had literally just finished my MBA. I had this white paper I had written back in 2018. I had this patent application that was due to be published in about 2 months. So, in February of 2021, I was going to see it published. I decided I was just going to go for it. Before, I didn't have necessarily the resources to, put a token out there and get people, interested in this. But, I kind of tweaked the white paper. I put up our website, energyledger.com. So I gave it a name. And, our original premise was to be, a essentially commodities solution for tracking, just oil. We wanted to track oil on the supply chain, and we wanted to do essentially what, no other company had done before with blockchain and oil and gas. That garnered a lot of interest. We had people very, very interested in, how big these companies were. They're really the only companies that are, in some sense, bigger than banks. If you look at Saudi Aramco, that's a $2 trillion company, and it's really not a company, it's a country. And, we started out, kind of the goal was to build this currency where data could be attached to transactions. That's why we used an ERC 777 contract. And, being able to attach, like, okay, we're doing a settlement. How big is the settlement, and what does that deal look like? And attaching it directly to the transaction was our goal. Over the past year and 3 months now, it's evolved. I moved out to Texas about this time last year to really get involved in the industry, to know and understand the problems and the aches and pains. And we found out that the need that we actually, kind of exist to remedy here, it begins with, full spectrum supply chain tracking, but also, carbon offsetting. So being able to track the supply chain, reduce wasted products, and calculate emissions, because $3 billion worth of oil goes missing in Texas every year. And there's definitely examples of that all across the world where that type of thing happens, and this ends up as runoff, and it ends up as wasted frack water being dumped on the roads. It's not an ideal situation, and then all those emissions that everybody hears about. So we built out an alternative to the program that a lot of people use. There's two programs that people use, in the oil and gas industry. One of them is pen and paper. The other one is a software called SAP, and not a lot of people know what that means, but some people joke that it means send all profits because it's so expensive. So we made an alternative. We did it. We delivered an alternative to SAP, built on blockchain. It's EVM compatible. And now we're looking at bringing it to other chains that are net zero. And that's, one of the big reasons we're looking at EOS right now. And then I guess the only other part of it is what I already described about those carbon credits. We've used smart contracts to, put carbon credits and their metadata on the blockchain. And the cool thing about that is it's not some speculative thing. Carbon credits are based on something that already happened, carbon that's already been taken out of the atmosphere and then can be parceled and sold. And typically that comes in big certificates, like a 5 million ton certificate. What we do is we allow those certificates to be broken up and fractionalized, and then, sold to individuals, that are environmentally conscious, but also businesses that want to buy them in blocks. So that's really the whole lowdown. And that was a side of the business that I didn't expect. It came to me, and it was kind of, the reason we were able to have that opportunity was just due to kind of the luck of the draw that we have, the great partners we do now. But, a lot of it was identifying the issue of the emissions.
Great. So a few reflections on that. Moving to Texas, to me, is more impressive than you having an MBA, right? So a lot of founders, a lot of projects that pitch to Helios, and just my career experience, a lot of founders will fall in love with their own idea, and they will chase that, somehow expecting that it's going to become a success. And they are almost averse to talking to potential real world customers, or going to where there is relevance to do what's called customer validation. And I know that you've just recently done a trip to the Middle East, for example, and you literally moved to Texas to go and understand better what is happening in the industry. Tell us more, like your attitude and your approach and your experiences in doing customer validation for your project.
Well, it's actually really interesting how our customer validation journey happened. A little under a year ago, so in July, late June of last year, we attended the Ritosa Family Office Investment Summit, and we met some wonderful people there that I can thank for some of our relationships with the mayor's office, Mayor Turner's office in Houston. We're on we have a great advisor there, Christopher Olson, who works in the International Trade Department. We met him at that conference. I also had, I can thank Brock Pierce for kind of, I met him there as well. I can thank him for kind of introducing me to EOS and the possibilities that there is with the direction that this network's going. And, from there, I kind of took things back, and I went home to Texas, where I had moved, not having an idea, who I'm gonna know, what we're gonna be doing. And, I found ourselves, me and my co-founder, Federico, we're going to Houston all the time. We're meeting with Chris, at Mayor Turner's office. We're getting involved with big companies at, high level oil conferences, in the Houston area. And, some of these connections, ended up being connections I would go all over the world to meet with, hence Saudi Arabia. Just a couple weeks ago, we ended up attending, we did Sarah Week, which is a very big energy conference. Every major oil and gas producer attends it. We got to see the likes of Chevron, Oxy, Exxon, there Equinor, many big oil companies were there. Probably all of the top 10 were there. I don't think Shell or BP were, for various reasons, but we got to see all those companies get real customer validation. And, in the interesting case of Saudi Aramco, we started very, very great conversations. I get emails from a lot of people in their organization, and that's, trading spots with Apple is the biggest company in the world. And they're super interested with blockchain, partially, thanks to one of our advisors, Nick Spanos, going over to Saudi a couple of years ago and educating, the people that work corporate in Dhahran, that is in Eastern Saudi Arabia, when it comes to blockchain and how they could use it. After Sarah Week, a really intense full week conference, I flew out to Saudi Arabia with Nick for the Retosa office, family office summit again. And, we found ourselves meeting with people from, Saudi Aramco, people who developed, widespread government software applications. We really met with a lot of individuals. And, I also had the privilege of meeting a Saudi prince, I think it was Prince bin Faisal, bin Abdul Majid, very long name, Al Saad. I think there's a couple other names in there, but I had the privilege of meeting him there. We had a great dinner. We were able to talk with a lot of wonderful people, and beyond just oil and gas, because their country is a lot more than that. They seek to move forward just like the rest of us. I learned a lot,
So what do you think? I'm going back to the MBA thing again. What do you think is more valuable, the MBA or the going and speaking to actual potential customers?
Customers, because it was, there's some of it, the MBA jargon helps, but the customer's need is not in MBA jargon. It is all in, hey, we've got this problem, how can you solve it? And that was another thing in Texas. We met with, the TIPRO Association, the Texas Independent Producers and Royalties Association. And I want you to imagine a crowd of men that all meet in San Antonio, and they're all probably 60 plus years old, and they own these, inherited, third or fourth generation drilling companies. They're all in the room, they're all on a panel, they're all talking about, oh, I don't think I'm doing anything wrong. This is what my, grandfather gave to me, and this is how my family is gonna endure, and we listened to those guys as well. So we got their side of the story, we got corporate side of the story, and we met in the middle with finding that the solution is, offsetting carbon is big for corporate and the supply chain tracking. But for these smaller guys, just replacing pen and paper and getting accurate numbers and not getting product lost or stolen is huge to raising their bottom line.
Okay, interesting. So there's two use cases that I'm hearing there, in fact. In lean startup literature, there's the concept, everyone knows the phrase product market fit, but in the literature, there's a stage that happens earlier called problem solution fit. And you don't need actual product or customers to sell in order to achieve problem solution fit. That's the purpose of customer validation. It sounds like those kind of conversations, although you're paying for flights and tickets and stuff, it's better, more cost efficient to go and actually have those conversations with some concept. You can draw a diagram on the back of a napkin in a conversation at dinner to get that kind of problem solution fit customer validation before you need to go and raise lots and lots and lots of money, like most startups try to do from the beginning, just on the basis of an idea. So before we get into SAP, give me a little bit more perspective on the pen and paper situation. So these are smaller operations. What is the pain or the problem that you can solve? But just give us that perspective of the problem or the situation.
Okay, so you have somebody out in West Texas and their job is to hold this and this, and they have to go around to each of these big cylindrical vats called a battery or a terminal. And they have to write down a report every day. They have to say, okay, terminal 1, battery 1 has this many barrels in it and this much water, because it's oil and water. Everybody knows those separate. So they have to tell, okay, how much is in each one of those. And they're supposed to walk up, drop a dipstick down, and then see, it's just like the dipstick in your car for the oil in your car, see where the oil comes up to, and then the other half is water, and they write it down. Just like any job out there, I was previously a postman for USPS. You want to get done, you take shortcuts. Sometimes these guys will just throw a rock at the container. This is a real story from those independent producers. They'll throw a rock. If it makes a think, there's something in there. They'll make an estimate. Okay, it's a 500 barrel tank. There's got to be something in there. Okay, I'll write it down. And if it makes a bong sound, okay, it's empty. So they'll just write it down as empty. And that's really how it is.
Wow.
So,
okay. And what does that lead to in terms of a business bottom line problem?
Well, you have missing product, you have product that's not accounted for, or it gets lost. Sometimes the wrong person can, pull that battery and they go to the wrong place, and then you don't know where it went. Sometimes to another company, sometimes to your competitor, and that's no good. You don't want that. So, half of their day, is the pen and paper. I'm going to make kind of a little example. Half their day is like this, doing their job. But any employee, anybody that employs hourly employees, knows they spend a lot of time on their cell phone. So that's why we're looking to, this guy's out there probably most of his day, hand on the wheel. He's got his cigarette and a Monster Energy in the cup holder, and he's on his phone texting his girlfriend or something. We want to make a mobile app to become, part of that person's, actual workflow. What are they actually going to use? And it's probably easier to just punch in a couple numbers on their cell phone in an application and then hit enter than it is to, be, trying to keep this paper log, and then the employer saying, well, this is wrong, you didn't do it right, and then having to go back and fix things. If you have an employee that's not doing their job, it shows, their numbers will show.
So your solution is a mobile app, and the guy's still going to throw the stone at the drum and get the ding or the dong, or what's the difference on that bit to make it accurate reading?
Well, the awesome thing about that is we have identified there's a lot of different sensor options out there. There are full-blown what's called a SCADA system, and that's just a sensor system that tells you how much oil's in those containers. There's other independent solutions that come as low as $10 a month for each container. We do want to grow to the point where we interface with those, and you don't necessarily need somebody driving battery to battery. But that being said, our goal is to get them through data to be accountable for their work. So if you have oil from this battery that was supposedly full leaving, and let's say the employee said it was full, employee 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 said it was full, and then it moves here to point B, it gets sold off, it's going to be sold, and then employee 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is saying, wait a second, that was half the oil that guy said was in it, so you can go back to that employee, and within a week of that guy working, instead of 6 months, you're going to know Jim Bob's not been doing his job, in 1 week, before the training period's over, you're going to know if you have an employee you should keep or somebody you need to let go.
Mm-hmm. Good. So that's clear as a use case. Sounds like an easy-ish kind of sell for those kind of size operators. Maybe comment on that, but let's transition to the actual platform, the SAP equivalent. I have a little bit of experience with SAP. It was a solution used by a company I worked with, and it's an ERP solution, enterprise resource planning, and they're used for a lot of different things. Procurement and accounting and pretty much everything can go into an ERP platform. How is what you're doing different? And how do you have the credibility to claim that you have something of an SAP equivalent?
Well, yeah, that's really interesting. I would say the ability for us to claim that we have an equivalent is, they actually very recently, they put something out that was very similar to what we're doing. They're trying to move in that direction. Now it's a massive company. So, I won't say exactly what it is, but it's a massive company and it's not looking like it actually uses blockchain technology, first off. And then the other thing it doesn't do is it doesn't help at all with the emissions reporting, So that's a big thing. It's all about origin tracking for them. ERP is a $43.5 billion a year industry as a whole. SAP is 27.5 billion worth of that. So they have about 2/3 of this right here, And if we look at the, if you look at the top 10 oil producers, and if you put a scenario out there, the top 10 oil producers produce around 630 million tons of carbon in their value chain. And if we do the math at, $30 a credit, that's $18.9 billion just in their value chain that they might be looking to offset. They want to offset those emissions. And that's just today. It's projected, the Wall Street Journal projects that, a carbon credit could be going for up to, $100 by the end of the decade. And we want to be there to service that market. If these top 10 producers were utilizing, obviously an ERP solution and then combined with the emissions tracking, this evolves to be, what I calculated out to be, if it stayed on the same trajectory it is now, we're looking at over, $100 billion market for just carbon offsetting alone, in the supply chain for the top 10 oil and gas, let alone every other natural resource producer out there. And we're looking at you lithium miners, the lithium and cobalt miners that are mining this, product to make batteries for electric cars. They have a ton of carbon overhead. And not to mention, every other industry out there, every industry under the sun that might use an ERP solution to track their value chain from origin to customer is producing carbon, and they also need to offset it. So
I know these licenses are incredibly expensive, but it's also the training, the consultant fees, the setup, the the updates, and just how embedded the integrations that the platforms have with other third-party platforms. Are you looking to completely displace SAP so that very large companies would simply drop SAP and just use your platform for all of their ERP requirements? Or is your platform kind of relatively cost efficient, or can you make it so that companies would perhaps use both in conjunction, yours specifically for the carbon offset program?
I think there is, some room for, with us as a startup, I would say, yeah, there's some room to use both. There's some room to interface with, existing data that's coming from SAP and just buy our offsets. You could use their software program, but buy our offsets. It's kind of like, so you can use an Android phone, but still use Apple AirPods now. One of the wonderful things that I see is that is going to be the first step, where these companies, they see, oh, okay, so we know generally they make a ballpark guesstimate off of their SAP numbers, and then they're buying our offsets. Now, where we really want to drive a wedge in SAP is the fact that why would you use this platform where it's literally a cost to train employees to use it? And they want 22% annual, they take 22%, I think, of the cost that you're already paying them to do maintenance. And for a company of 200 people, that's $3 million that you're paying to SAP, send all profits. And that's ridiculous. Scale that up to a company like Shell with 79,000 employees, and let's say a quarter of them are using SAP. That's a lot of licenses, and that's a lot of maintenance. So we do want to make a cost-effective version of that. The avenue we're pursuing, through our tokenized model is kind of a pay-as-you-go solution where you just pay to add a user. You pay for adding a user, and you pay to add batches using our token, and then a balancing contract kind of keeps that, in US dollars flat at $500 per user and $25 per batch. And then the rest of it, is it's very easily handled through the platform. You just hook up your company credit card and it kind of handles things. And the tokens, we're able to take those into our foundation, that kind of provides viable tokenomics for the upkeep of this product. But then where we really make our money is taking a percent of all the carbon offset sales that happen towards these companies. We heavily market the idea of, okay, you saved all this money with us. Look at how much you saved compared to SAP. Why not spend that offsetting your supply chain? You're going to make your shareholders happy. You're going to be able to get people to invest more with your company. And, when emissions reporting becomes mandatory, we're looking at oil companies, they'll be the first ones on the chopping block for scope 3 emissions. Then, you have something of a symbiosis where, we make, we have different percentages, kind of put out for carbon credit batches uploaded to our platform. And we make most of our revenue there off those percentages, while we still are, even being 99% cheaper than SAP, that's still over $1 billion a year market, for us. So it's huge. We delivered an easier to use software on blockchain, and we're still capturing over $1 billion a year, while really putting into question, well, why do we use this software from Germany to track our supply chain and value chain,
So I just want to be clear then, you're basically saying that even for large companies, SAP, your platform in the year or so of development is like, one of the complaints I know about SAP is that there's so many features that companies never actually even use, right? Yep. So so it might be a super sophisticated platform, but if companies don't need those features, so your platform does what companies need with regards to everything that SAP does for supply chain. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. So we take the core features that matter the most, and we looked at natural resource production, which is fairly, similar supply chains. It doesn't matter. I talk to people in the coal industry, in other commodities, mining, but mainly oil and gas. And just being able to simply go in and upload a PDF and have it hashed into the blockchain is huge. That is the feature that, most of them need, is that kind of data assurance behind a PDF, but also the ability to write in, okay, we need this data at this step, this data at this step. And all of those, can be adjusted, and it's a one-click deployment, which is what we're working towards, a one-click deployment on AWS. They cover those costs in-house, and our costs stay fixed. It's not this big spreadsheet like it is with SAP.
So do you already have companies that are saying, yes, we want to use the platform, hurry up and finish, like deliver it?
Yeah, that's actually really cool you asked that. So we have probably, I think, a little over a dozen, when it comes to companies committed. If I pull up some of those right now, we have Digital Stream Energy, which is a subsidiary of Citizens companies. They're actually, employing our software. And then when it comes to companies that we have committed, we have several more, and those are, we have XC Generations, TechCom, and the Citizens companies, to name a few. And then we have, I have a bunch more that are in Mexico and other parts of Latin America. So, just having these written memorandums of understanding with so many great companies that say they're simply just saying, hey, you guys get it done, we want to use it. It means a lot. It means a lot to our cause, and it's helpful, when we come out to investors and just our community that's interested in the product that we made in the utility token that we, kind of grew into. They love it. They love to see that.
Just explain a little bit more in terms of the token utility on the current platform. So you started with the original idea of a token to connect data onto the blockchain. Now the product is very different. What have you carried forward as utility for the token?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, because, the tokenomics of this is based on the fact that every time you start a new batch or complete the last step in the batch, there is a PDF where the hash, it's hashed locally on, that EC2 instance or the server that the company chooses to run our energy operating system on. And, that IPFS data, the PDF is hashed on there. The hash gets put in the transaction. So there are steps along the way where you just pay the gas fee, for that network, and that hash of the PDF gets put in, and you can compare against the one in the server later. And the server stays private. That's the beautiful thing here, is the server is private within that company, but the hash of the data travels with the transaction. We charge in our token to add a user. So like a user license, that's $500. We charge in our token to create a batch. And then we're looking at, for, all intents and purposes, charging a fee at the end, but I don't think we're going to go with that model. I think we want all of the parts in the middle to just be the native gas fee. So
very cool. That's clear. What would you say are the challenges, you as a startup founder, Web3 startup founder, where do you see the biggest challenges? Was it customer validation? Was it technical solutions in terms of blockchain? Was it working on UX of a front-end platform, or anything else?
The hardest part was because all the developers want to go work on a meme coin. So it's really hard to hire. So, I had to do a lot of this, off the, back of my own talents. And then there was various parts when it came to the front end that I had to, hire out kind of on project to get it done. But thankfully, I put in a lot of time when I was a teenager and young adult to learn how to code, and those skills weren't super hard to translate to Web3 technology and get us up and running with a minimum viable product.
Got you. So you've participated in the Helios incubator program. The business model, everything was already in place. But what have you learned, or what difference has being on the incubator actually made for you?
It's made all the difference, because, we're just at the part, where we're going out to, raise real capital to scale this solution up and get kind of some of the nitpicky things out of the way, when it comes to development, like how does this integrate with sensors? How do we get an iPhone and Android native application? How do we get Amazon one-click deploy, other things like that. And then there's legal when it comes to our patent. So there's all of that world of things. And from the beginning of Helios to the end, I mean, I've gone through the CERAWeek conference, Saudi Arabia, and probably a dozen different people that we've, approached and, probably, we've gotten them to sign these MOUs, and some of them we're getting them to potentially invest in us. And being able to refine our pitch deck, we had a pitch deck and I sent it to you when we started, Gabriel, and it's evolved to something viable. When I go to an industry facing professional, they know what I'm talking about and it makes sense from a business standpoint to them. And we've raised some eyebrows at the biggest company in the world, Saudi Aramco. I mean, I'm getting emails from people at Saudi Aramco. I would have never thought that 4 years ago. I never thought that I'm going to be shaking hands with a prince in Saudi Arabia. I never thought that. But, we're walking through all of this. I remember I took one of the Helios calls in my car after finishing a day at CERAWeek. And, I'm living proof that this is, one of the best models for doing an incubator program, because, I'm out in the field literally taking, trying our pitch deck and then coming back and working with a group of other like-minded individuals to refine it, and then taking it right back and going and pitching it to the people that are the customer at the end of the day. So it's great.
Fantastic. Is there anything that we haven't covered that's on your mind to share? It'd be good to get an update with you in the coming months, but anything else, any launches? Like, obviously this is a very high end. What would be the smallest type of companies that might be relevant as a customer? Or you've mentioned needing developers, development being a challenge. Are there partnership opportunities that might be relevant for people listening and thinking, let's speak to Garrett at Energy Ledger because maybe we can collaborate on a particular project?
Well, yeah, I think, one of the biggest things there when it comes to collaboration, and this has been something that throughout the Helios program, I admittedly didn't know a ton about EOS. I mean, I bought some like way back when, but when I learned that it was EVM compatible and you could add it to MetaMask, I saw a real opportunity where some thanks to Brock Pierce for really putting the team on his back. And, I saw what he did the other day, kind of putting his Block 1 shares, behind this and showing he really believes in it. But, we want to make our product, the energy operating system. We want to, I remember early on with EOS, not a lot of people knew what it meant. I think it was supposed to be like the Greek word or the Greek goddess or something like that. But, we want to make it the platform, the energy operating system. And there's really two big reasons why. The transactions are net zero. I mean, nobody in our industry wants to hear Bitcoin or Ethereum. They hate the carbon. They just won't touch it. So net zero is huge for us. The other big thing is, the market cap of it is just big enough where you could realistically settle, you could settle $100 million transaction, utilizing this platform, and it's growing too. So that helps, when energy companies and, our initial goal was to build a settlement platform. But I think building in this type of community and having the resources that we need to build it on, a net zero platform with the ability to actually service customers as big as ours, it's huge. Other than that, when it comes to developers, I mean, I guess this is a call for people who really do want to change the world. They, they have a passion for working on something that really matters, even though it's not, immediate profit or the next meme coin or Doge. We're out here actually solving, a big issue that has gotten brought up for, all I can remember in my life. I remember first hearing about, how, these oil companies put so much carbon in the atmosphere when I was in 4th grade, and, we're really out here, we're going to change the way this industry works, and we're going to change the way countries in Latin America, specifically right now, Honduras, but there are other countries like Mexico that we're looking at, developing carbon offset programs with. People that want to get involved in either those programs, maybe running their own program, getting rewarded and putting those credits on our chain, we want to hear from you. So.
I happen to be in Mexico, and I've got contacts with people with land and looking to do things. So I have no idea if that's relevant, but let's talk offline and see what might be
Yeah.
suitable as a
Yeah,
connection.
I have a I have a pamphlet from the Mexican government I could send to you, and I'm going to be in Mexico City when I think in 2 weeks. So I don't know where you're at, but
Oh man, we might just miss each other, but we'll see. Cool. Anything else at all then to describe about the project or your journey to date? And we'll do an update in a couple months' time.
yeah, I think that's about all we have for now. And I definitely look forward to seeing where we are in a couple months' time, because it's growing, and it's day by day. I wake up and I get those really affirming communications from our partners and other people we're working with that I can't wait to see where we are in 3-6 months.
Yeah, amazing. The token is tradable at the moment. Is it on any exchanges?
Yes.
Where do people go for information on the project and the token?
Yeah, go to energyledger.com. There is information about our token on there. And, if you go on CoinMarketCap, we are Energy Ledger, ELX is our token symbol. Currently, you can find us on Uniswap and PancakeSwap. So, it's not financial advice, but, if you're looking to utilize this product in your company, also email us at info@energyledger.com, and, we'll get you started. So.
All right, we'll leave it there. Garrett, good speaking to you.
Wonderful. Thank you.